Alrighty, so today we're going over, again, solving quadratics by square roots, our notes. In the basic form we have here is the ax squared plus c equals 0. That means there's no bx term. And you solve using square roots, and you solve it just like a normal equation, trying to, step 1 here, isolate the x squared. So that's why I did add 49 on both sides to get the x all by itself. And then you take the square root of both sides. So then you get the x equals positive or negative 7. And the reason why I get positive and a negative 7 is because if I square, let's see, 7 squared, positive 7 squared equals 49. And then negative 7 squared also equals 49. So that is why for your answer you get a negative 7 and a positive 7, or you get the negative and the positive of that number. Okay. So most importantly here, remember that a positive number always has 2 square roots, okay? Let's do a couple of examples here. Our directions, it says solve the following quadratic equations by square roots. So let's do number 1. We've got x squared minus 16 equals 0. First thing we want to do is isolate that x squared. So I'm going to move this 16 to the other side, add 16 to both sides. So then I've got x squared equals 16. Since that 16 is positive, I can do the square root of both sides. So now I've got x equals. And then I'm just looking for the square root of 16. The square root of 16 is 4. But for this, remember all of your answers, it can be a positive or a negative. So you want to put the plus sign and the minus sign on top of each other like I did here. So that would be your answer, but another way to write out your answer is say x equals, and then you've got the squiggly bracket, negative 4, comma, positive 4. This would be how you write your final answer to say that we have a negative 4 and a positive 4, because negative 4 squared is 16 and positive 4 squared is 16. Okay, let's do another one. Let's do number 3. First, we want to isolate that x squared. So I'm going to move that 25 to the other side. I'm going to do the opposite, minus 25 on both sides. So then I have x squared equals 0 minus 25 is negative 25. Okay, so now I have the x squared isolated. I would take the square root. Okay, but notice that this square root over here, negative 25, it's a negative number. You can't take a square root of a negative number. So for this one, it's going to be no solution. No solution for your answer, because you cannot take the square root of a negative number. Cannot take square root of a negative number. Okay, so that is why that answer there for number 3 is no solution. Okay, so sometimes you'll get that, but for most of these today, you won't. I don't think you'll get very many no solutions. But let's do another one here. I'm going to skip that one. Let's do number 7. So we have negative 2x squared equals negative 98. Our first goal is to isolate the variable, or the x squared. Okay, so we read this as negative 2 times x squared. So just like solving an equation, I'm going to get rid of that negative 2 by doing the opposite of multiplication, which is division. Divide by negative 2. So those negative 2's cancel out. Here's my x squared. Here's my equal sign. And then we're going to divide negative 98 divided by negative 2. Negative divided by negative is positive, and then 98 divided by 2 is 49. Okay, now I have the x squared isolated. My next step, or my, I guess you could say last step, is to take the square root of both sides. So now I've got x equals, go ahead and tell me, type in the chat or turn your microphone on. What is the square root of 49? What times what is 49? Same number. 7, perfect. So I've got my 7. And then most importantly, you cannot forget this, your answer, it's either positive or negative 7. Okay, you just stack them on top of each other like that, and then writing out your final answer. I've got my x equals the squiggly, negative 7 and positive 7. This would be how you write your final answer there. Okay, let's do another one, number 9. We've got the 3x squared minus 108 equals 0. Okay, just like solving a normal equation, first we want to do the add or subtracting, then you do the multiplication or division. So first I'm going to get rid of this 108. I'm going to do the opposite, add 108 to both sides. So those cancel out. Then I've got 3x squared equals 108. And then how can I get rid of that 3? What should I do to both sides? You can type in the chat or turn your microphone on. Should I add, subtract, multiply, or divide both sides by 3?
Divide.
Divide, perfect, because we read that as 3 times x squared. So I'll do the opposite, divide by 3. So those cancel out. I've got my x squared equals, and then 108 divided by 3 is, 36. Now I have the x squared isolated. It's all by itself. Then I'm going to take the square root of both sides. So now I've got x equals. What are my two different solutions? You're going to have two different numbers. What's the square root of 36? Positive or negative what? So you can type in the chat as well. Tell me, what's the square root of 36? What times what? 6. So here's my 6, positive and negative 6. And then we can write out our answer in this fancy way. X equals negative 6 and positive 6. And then that is it for your answer there for number 9. Okay? Let's keep on going. There's 2 pages. Next one we'll do, I'm going to skip number 11. Whoops. Let's do number 13. Okay, so we're trying to isolate that x squared. So what should I do first? Should I get rid of the 9 or get rid of the 16 first?
16.
That's 16, perfect. So the opposite of minus 16 is plus 16 on both sides. So these cancel out. I'm going to bring down my 9x squared equals 16. And then we need to get rid of that 9. We read that as 9 times x squared. So I'm going to do the opposite, divide by 9. So those cancel out. Here's my x squared. And this 16 over 9, I cannot simplify. I can't divide. So I'm just going to rewrite 16 over 9. Okay. Now I have my x squared isolated. Now I can take the square root on both sides. So here's my x equals. Another way to write this square root of 16 over 9 is to do square root of 16 over square root of 9. Okay, so we're going to take the square root of the top and the bottom to help us identify the answer. We know that we can have a positive or a negative for our final answer. Now we're just going to look at our fraction. What's the square root of 16? What times what is 16? Well, 4 times 4 is 16. And then on the bottom, what's the square root of 9? What times what is 9? 3 times 3 is 9. So I get that 4 over 3 for my fraction, but most importantly, you have that positive, negative, and then we can just write out our final answer, x equals, we've got a negative 4 over 3 and a positive 4 over 3. And then that is your final answer. Okay, so if you want to put the fraction like this, you can split up those square roots, take a square root on top, square root on bottom to get your final answer. Let's do number 15 next. Okay, so we've got the 5x squared minus 1 equals x squared. Let's first move this x squared to the other side since it's a positive 1x squared. I'm going to do the opposite, minus 1x squared on both sides. So those cancel out. Over here, we've got 5x squared minus 1x squared. 5 minus 1 is 4. Here's my x squared. Bring down the minus 1 equals, since these two canceled out, there's nothing left. What number is nothing? 0. Okay, so we just had to first get all of our variables on one side. and then continue solving like normal. Next is add 1 to both sides. So then we have 4x squared equals 1. And then I divide by 4. So we've got our x squared equals this 1 over 4. I cannot simplify, so I'm going to rewrite 1 over 4. So now I have my x squared isolated. I can take my square root. Remember, I can rewrite this as square root of 1 over square root of 4. So then I get my x equals positive or negative what over what? What's the square root of 1, and then what's the square root of 4? What would I get for my fraction for the answer? Square root of what? Or sorry, square root of 1, which is what? And then over square root of 4, which is what? Let's first do square root of 1. What's the square root of 1? What times what is 1? One times 1 is 1. So up top I get a 1. And then we'll do the square root of 4. What times what is 4? 2. 2 times 2 is 4. So I get a positive, negative, and then my fraction 1/2, 1 over 2. So we can write our final answer. X equals negative 1/2 and positive 1/2. Okay, and then there's your final answer there for number 15. So let's go on and do a couple of them where we get some different types of answers, where we get irrational solutions. And your zeros, they can be irrational. Solve the following quadratic equations. Write all answers in simplest radical form. Okay, so let's do number 17. You'll see what I mean with irrational in just a second. Number 17, we've got x squared minus 3 equals 0. Again, just like normal, we want to isolate that x squared. So I add 3 to both sides. So those cancel out. Bring down my x squared equals 0 plus 3 is 3. Now that it's isolated, I take the square root on both sides. So I've got x equals. Okay, I know that we need a positive and a negative. Can I take the square root of 3? Is that possible for us to do? Is there a perfect square for 3? Like we know 1 squared equals 1, 2 squared equals 4, 3 squared equals 9, and we're already at a bigger number than 3. So that means we cannot take the square root of 3. So for this one, you would just leave your answer as a square root of 3. Positive or negative square root of 3. You can have that square root as your answer as long as it's positive. Okay, so that's our answer. Just continue writing it in the same format like we've been doing. X equals, that squiggly, negative square root of 3, and then positive square root of 3. That would be your final answer. That's how you would write it out, leaving it as a square root, a positive, and a negative form of it. Let's do another one, number 19. Number 19. First, our goal is to isolate the x squared. So I'm going to first get rid of that plus 8. I'll do the opposite, minus 8 on both sides. So then I've got x squared equals 48. Okay, so now I've got my x squared isolated. Now I can take the square root on both sides, so that I'm left with x equals. So we can't take the square root of 48, but this one we can actually split it up into 2 different perfect squares. I know I've got a positive and a negative. So I'm going to make this one a perfect square times the not perfect square. So this one that goes here is perfect square. You can actually do, we need to figure out what times what is 48, where the first one is a perfect square. So for this one, we can actually do 16 times 3, because 16 times 3 is 48, and 16 is a perfect square. Okay, so let's simplify that square root of 16. We've got the x equals positive, negative. Square root of 16 is 4. And then that square root of 3, I cannot do a square root of 3, so I just rewrite, bring it down, that square root of 3. And then that's pretty much your answer. Put it in the nice form with a squiggly. We've got -4 square root of 3 and then +4 square root of 3. That is how you write your final answer with your square roots and everything like that. Okay, so I know that was kind of quick, but we do have lots of people out because of testing today, so I wanted to make the meeting short so everyone can go back and watch it nice and quick. So what I want you to do, if you need more practice with this, go ahead and finish the rest of these notes on here and send me a message if you have questions, or you can stay on the chat for questions and everything like that. But if you feel good about it, you can go ahead and leave and then get ready for the assignment tomorrow. It's going to be on this topics that we covered yesterday and today. Okay, so if you are all done, you're all good. Have a good day. Just make sure you say something in the chat before you leave. And then if not, I will still be here for a few more minutes. Okay, but I'm going to go ahead and end the recording.
Okay, bye.
Bye, guys.